Joe Anderson and Al Clopine of Pure Financial Advisors have the answers to your retirement plan. This is your money, your wealth.
Hey, what does rock and roll and retirement have anything to do with each other? A lot, to be honest with you. Because are you going to rock your 401k or are you going to roll it? That's what we're going to get into today because it's a big deal. A lot of you are retiring. A lot of you have 401k plans. And some of you are deciding, should you keep it in the 401k plan? That means rocking it. Or should you roll it out and get it into another type of plan? So it's all about rock and roll this morning. Wake up. We're talking money and we're talking rock and roll. Welcome to the show, Your Money, Your Wealth. My name is Joe Anderson. I'm a certified financial planner, president of Pure Financial Advisors. I'm with the big man, as always, Mr. Alan Clopine. He's a CPA. Wow, all fired up today. A little rock and roll. So when you look at this is a big deal because the Department of Labor is really diving in with a fiduciary standard of saying, all right, well, should you keep the money in the 401k or should you roll it out into a different plan? You have options here, but you want to make sure that you know your options. That's what's on my mind today. Alan, you're a big rock and roll fan, aren't you, my friend?
Yes, I am.
So when you get into retirement planning, there's a lot of different things that you have to take a look at. And if you keep it in your retirement plan or do you roll it out? And so let's kind of break it down and let's bring in the big man, Big Al Clopine. They should have played a little bit better music on your little intro there, Big Al.
Well, I know, huh? That wasn't very rock and rollish. But Joe, what are some of your favorite rock and roll groups? I know you recently saw the Stones.
I
right?
did. I did see the Rolling Stones, Petco Park. You know, the guy's like 75 years old, and he rocked it. It was an incredible show.
Yeah.
You know, I like all types of music, but yeah, I'm a big fan of the Stones now.
Well, I have to say, my very first album was James Taylor. So
James, that is not rock and roll, Alan. That is what you listen to when you go to bed.
It's acoustic rock.
That is not even close to rock and roll.
But I will say, I love the Stones.
James Taylor.
That was my first album, I'm just being honest. I do love the Stones. I love Crosby, Stills, and Nash & Young. And currently, I love Foo Fighters.
How about Yanni?
Huh?
Yanni?
Yanni? No.
Is that on your top 10?
No, not really.
Oh, boy.
But why don't we get back into our topic, right?
Let's do this.
Which is rocking and rolling your 401k. And by rock, we mean should you keep it in your 401k? By rolling, should you roll it to an IRA? Or maybe you should roll it to another 401k. So when you think about it, you got this 401k, maybe you've retired, maybe you've left your job, you have a new job, and you've got 4 choices, right? You can keep it in the existing plan, so that's our rock, if you will. You can roll it to a new 401k at your new employer. That's generally allowed. You can roll it to an IRA, or you can spend it. And I'd say spending it's the most fun, but that's not what we're going to recommend today because that's for your retirement. And Joe, it is interesting that a lot of advisors out there will tell you just hands down you should always roll it to an IRA, and that's not necessarily true in each case.
Right, yeah, you got to take a look at what the plan is, what the options are, what the fees are, what the cost is. I mean, if you enjoy the plan, you can keep it in the plan. So there's a lot of pros to keep it in the plan, and we'll break that down too. But it also might make sense for a lot of you to look at considering rolling it out of the overall plan. So let's dive in now. Let's kind of see, all right, if you're going to rock it, if you're going to keep it in the plan, what are some things that people need to look at?
Yeah, and I would say there's a few things here. One is your 401k fees may be low. Sometimes they're pretty high, sometimes they're low, so you want to check that, how much you're actually spending in this plan. And sometimes the fees are a bit hidden. You get penalty-free access at age 55 if you terminate from service. So you know the rules, the regular rules for an IRA, you got to be 59 and a half to get that money out without the 10% penalty. 401k, if you retire 55, you can get that money out. There is special tax treatment on company stock. If you own it inside the 401k, you can actually pull it out and pay capital gains tax on the majority, potentially the majority of that amount, which is a cheaper rate. And Joe, I would say institutional investments are sometimes available in these 401ks that are not necessarily available in your IRA.
Right, and then you can also take a look at 401k plans are under the ERISA law, so there could be some credit protection, bankruptcy, and things like that. And so also when it comes to required distributions, so if you're working, you do not have to take a required distribution out of your 401k if you're still an active participant. So you have to look at the plan. If you work for a larger employer, I'm telling you, the fees and the cost of your funds inside those potential 401k plans might be lower than you can get on the retail channel. So that's a huge deal. Fees and cost are a big component in your overall rate of return. So it's not an automatic rolling this thing out. Even though a lot of you are doing that, you want to make sure that is the right move for you. So there's some components that might make sense to keep it in the overall 401k plan.
Yeah, and let's also look, Joe, as far as rolling it to an IRA. In some of the cases there, some of the advantages are if your 401k fees are high, you may want to roll it out to an IRA and look at low-cost investments. Certainly, there's probably additional investment choices possible. Now, some of the 401ks out there are brokerage accounts, and you have the whole world available, but an IRA typically has more investment choices. It's nice to consolidate and simplify. A lot of people end up with just 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 retirement accounts. It's hard to manage that way. And if you want to do some Roth conversions, it's actually better and easier to do it in that in the IRA versus the 401k.
Yeah, when it comes to recharacterizations, you can do some a little bit more, I guess, more specialty or maybe more advanced moves when it comes to some conversion strategies.
So let me ask you, James Taylor, you're not buying that for rock and roll?
Not even, no.
No.
That is not rock and roll.
That's soft rock.
That's
soft
folk,
rock.
That's folk music.
It's acoustic rock.
Acoustic. Acoustic. No, that's what I listen to when I need to go to sleep.
When you're stressed out?
Yeah, when I'm stressed out, I just need to listen to some James Taylor. Hey, we're getting into rocking and a rolling your 401k. We got a lot more to discuss. We're just getting started, so don't go anywhere. When we get back, we're going to break things down even further to say, all right, well, should I keep it in the 401k? Should I roll it out? And we'll break it down. Enjoy the morning. We'll be back in a second. Show's called Your Money or Wealth. Hey, welcome back to the program. What does Mick Jagger have to do with your retirement? Well, I'm telling you this. What we're talking about today is, should you rock and roll your 401k plan? Should you keep it in your current plan, or should you roll it out? There's a lot of things that you have to consider in regards to this decision. So do you keep it in the plan? Do you rock with it, or do you roll it out? That's what we're going to get into in this segment. But before we do that, let's go to the true-false question.
My way seem to be one and the same.
Think that's rock and roll? You
Okay,
don't think it's rock and roll?
I want to pull the audience. Please email me right now if you think that this is rock and roll.
It's rock and roll. It's rock and roll.
All right, if you just joined us, Alan, in the beginning of the show said, all right, the best rock and roll band, period, is James Taylor. Are you kidding? This is not rock and roll.
Actually, I didn't say that. I said that was my first rock and roll album.
Well, it's not.
And you were questioning I'm calling it soft rock.
This is folk. There's nothing
No,
against
this
James
is
Taylor.
not folk.
This is very nice
This
music. If you're with a woman or something like that, a nice candlelight
you ever
dinner.
heard the term acoustic rock, right?
What?
Yeah.
No. Let's go to the true false. This is ridiculous. Well, true or false? Is James Taylor?
As James Taylor would say,
is James Taylor a rock and roll star?
I can avoid
false.
taking my required minimum distribution at 70.5. James is just about 70.5. Come to think of it, if I roll to my IRA, what's the answer? I wasn't even paying attention.
Can I do what? James Taylor is not a rock and roll person. That's it.
You got that wrong, brother.
So I don't even know. So let's just continue on with the considerations.
Anyway, the answer is false. You can't avoid your RMD by rolling to an IRA.
No, you cannot. You can
You
avoid.
weren't paying attention.
No,
you
I
were
wasn't.
so stuck on the James Taylor
You
thing.
can avoid your required distribution if you keep it in the 401k plan as you're still working.
If you're 70.5.
If you're 70.5, correct.
Yeah.
And if you roll that money out into an IRA, here's a big mistake that people make, is that they roll the money out, it's in the IRA now, but they're still working. Okay, well now you have to take the distribution out of the IRAs, then you have your salary on top of that, you're just pushing yourself into a higher tax bracket. Here's another cool move too, is if you have existing IRAs and you're still working, you have an active participant in that 401k plan, move the IRAs into the 401k. That would avoid all RMDs until you retire. And then you have until April 1st the following year after you retire to start taking those distributions. And of course, those distributions would be based on your age. So it would be a lot higher distribution, but you can avoid that taxation as you're working. So some considerations to look at in regards to keeping it in or rolling it out, Al.
Yeah, and I would say this, take a look at the fees and expenses inside your 401k. If they're low, maybe you might just want to stay there, but if they're high, you may want to get that out and roll it to the IRA. Distributions, there is different rules on distributions, and as a matter of fact, it's if you're retiring younger, you actually might want to keep it into the 401k because you can take that money out at age 55 if you're terminated from service without penalty. You still pay taxes on it. And then it's investment choices, and in some cases consolidation. Some of you have 4, 5, 6, 7 different 401ks. Maybe you just want to roll them out all into one IRA, have all your assets in one place. Much easier to manage, Joe.
Yeah, and a couple of other things too is that IRA rules are more flexible at your passing, at your death, than 401k rules
Sure.
in regards to stretching out the tax liability and things like that. So there's a lot of different things that you have to consider. But I think the number one is fees and cost. Because if you have a smaller plan or a larger plan, you have to take a look at the fees because larger corporations, let's say 2,000 to 3,000 employees, it's the law of large numbers. They have institutional type pricing in those overall funds. So you want to make sure that you look at the cost because you could potentially get into that same fund on the retail channel and pay a lot more money for the exact same fund. And then that would be a drag on your overall return. So fees are a big consideration when you're looking at keeping it in the plan or moving it out, Al.
Yeah, no question. And certain kinds of plans like TSPs, for example, tend to be really inexpensive. 403Bs tend to be much more expensive, so it just kind of depends. And small companies, as we talked about, can be more expensive because they're not as large. You know, Joe, another thing really has to do with the actual investments inside the plans, because not all investments have the same fees. Some investments are pretty expensive, and some are a lot cheaper.
Right, but then you also have to take a look, do you have enough access, right, to create the diversified portfolio that you want? So on your screen here, it looks like what an average mutual fund is going to cost you 1.5%, maybe 1.3%. That's according to Morningstar. But if you want to go into an index fund or maybe an ETF, those fees are considerably lower. But fees is not the end-all be-all, right? Because you could have a very low fee investment that is performing very poorly depending on what type of fund that it is. So you want to make sure that the construction of your allocation, that's the most important. So if you do not necessarily, let's say, have access to smaller companies or maybe international, emerging markets, things like that inside the 401k plan, it might make sense to move it out so you can control that overall diversification. Also, when you're taking distributions, now you're selling assets. You might have a little bit more control in the IRA because of the different choices. You have all the choices in the world in an IRA. You can direct that any way that you choose. So I don't want to say, hey, just look at fees. I think fees is very important. But you also, I mean, the end all be all too, I guess, is the allocation, making sure that the investments are doing everything that you want them to do. Yeah,
well, and there's no question that IRAs tend to have a lot more investment choices than 401ks, and that's important. Another thing, Joe, really has to do with when you want to take the money out. And it depends upon your age. Now, if you're over 59 and a half, it doesn't really matter in a sense because you can take money out of either plan without penalty. But look at this. Did you know that with a regular IRA, you got to wait till 59 and a half to take the money out without penalty? 401k, if you're terminated from service, you can pull that money out at age 55 without penalty. So for those of you that would like to retire earlier, then that can be a really good way to go. Now, we also mentioned the flip side of that is if you're 70 and a half and still working, then of course you may want to leave it in the active 401k because you don't have to currently take distributions. And some other things here is with your IRA, as I mentioned, you do have to take that distribution, required distribution, 70 and a half 401k. You do unless you're working, an active participant. And realize if you have a bunch of 401ks, you have to take a bunch of required minimum distributions. But if you have multiple IRAs, you only have to take one required distribution. That will count for all of them. And Joe, there's another strategy that I think our viewers would be interested in if you have company stock in your 401k. Yeah, this is missed quite a bit, and this is a pretty cool strategy. So for those of you that have company stock inside your 401k plan, this happened quite a bit, let's say with SCIC employees,
Sempra, SDG&E, you know, the list goes on and on, where if you worked for the company for 10, 20, 30, sometimes 35 years, we see a lot of buildup in the company stock. So if I work for SDG&E or Sempra, I might have a lot of Sempra stock inside my 401k plan because a lot of these companies matched your 401k contributions with company stock. So if you take a look at your 401k plan, and this, let's just pretend that this is a 401k plan. And then let's say here you have company stock, and let's say that this is $1.3 million 401k plan, and out of this, maybe you have $600,000 in company stock inside the plan. Now, if I take a distribution from a 401k plan, everyone should know by now, if you watch this show, is that you're taxed at the highest of rates. It's ordinary income. It starts at 10, it goes all the way up to 39.6. So every single distribution that you take, you're taxed at ordinary income rates. Now, if I do have company stock inside the 401k plan, this is called net unrealized appreciation. Here's what you do. You can take this company stock, all right, and you can move it out into a brokerage account. Now I have that $600,000 stock inside a brokerage account. This is the 401k plan subject to ordinary income. If I now have company stock in a brokerage account, guess what? You're only taxed at capital gains rates, which in most cases it's only going to be 15% versus as high as 39.6. So 40 or 15, which would you rather pay? Of course, you would want to get that stock outside of the retirement account because then you're taxed at a lot lower rate. Here's the catch. You have to pay tax on whatever the basis is, whatever that you paid. So for instance, if you bought the stock for $1, it is now worth $10. All right, so you have $9 of gain. Okay, that's the net unrealized appreciation. You can move that appreciation of that stock right here into a brokerage account, and then now you're subject to capital gains rate. It could save a lot of you a lot of money in taxes. Do not miss this opportunity, because if you take that money and you roll it into an IRA, forget about it. It's gone. It's lost forever. So if you have company stock inside your 401k plan, just think net unrealized appreciation, or better yet, think your money, your wealth. Someone told me something. I should talk to a professional before I move it. When we get back, we got some more rock and roll to go through, so don't go anywhere. The show's called Your Money, Your Wealth.
My choice, 'cause I can see a heavenly man full of angels coming just to
Hey, welcome back to the program. If you're just joining us, we're talking about rock and roll in retirement. It's no, not you to retire and join a rock band, even though you probably could, because a lot of these rockers are in their 70s. It's crazy. But we're looking at keeping your 401k or rolling it out. So if you want to keep it in the plan, here's some considerations to take a look at. You want to make sure, hey, you look at the fees, look at the investment options that you have, look at the distribution choices. Those are the major components that you want to make sure that you take a look at. If none of those line up to what your goals are, then you roll it into an IRA. Or cash it out. That's another option, but don't do that. You'll just get stuck with a bunch of taxes. You might have fun spending the money, but we highly would suggest otherwise. Let's turn the show back to you and answer your emails. But before we do that, let's go to the true false. See how you did here.
I can contribute to an IRA even though I am unemployed if my spouse works. The answer to that is yes, absolutely, you sure can. Now, there are a few limitations based upon income levels, but I will say this, regardless of your income level, you can always contribute to an IRA. Whether you can deduct it or not depends upon whether your spouse is working in a retirement plan or whether you have a retirement plan. And of course, in this example, you're not working, so you don't currently have a plan. But yeah, you can use your spouse's income to qualify for your own IRA. So the answer is yes, true.
You know, that's a missed opportunity so many times, is that, all right, well, one spouse is working, one spouse is not, and the other spouse is not contributing to a retirement account, maybe a Roth IRA. So even though you're not working, the rules with Roth IRAs is that you have to have earned income. So people say, well, I'm not working. But as long as you're married to someone that has earned income, you potentially can contribute to a Roth IRA. So make sure you take advantage of that. If you're not working and your spouse is, as long as there's income in the household and you qualify, make sure you take advantage of it, because we see that missed quite a bit. So let's go to the email bag, Mr. Clopine.
Yes, Stephen Del Mar. He's got quite a mouthful. He says, my 401k is mostly made up of highly appreciated stock from my old employer's company. Should I roll over the retirement account to the the new account
into the new plan?
to my new employer plan since I plan to work for another decade?
Alan, you need your glasses?
Yes, I do. Well, I was going between. See,
Yeah, that screen wasn't big enough for you.
I'm a baby boomer. I'm a rock and roller. I can't see that
Yeah,
well.
you've been rock and roll to James Taylor a little bit too much there, buddy.
Anyway, so what's the answer, Joe?
Here's the answer is that, all right, well, so you have highly appreciated company stock inside your 401k plan. Do you roll it into the new employer's plan? The answer is no. Here's what you do. You can take out that employer stock and put it into a brokerage account. I just went through that example in our last segment. It's called net unrealized appreciation. So I'm no longer working for the company. I have a lot of company stock inside the 401k. He said it was highly appreciated. Well, take advantage of the tax law here. What you can do is move that stock into a brokerage account. Now you're subject to capital gains tax. You do have to pay tax on the cost basis, whatever that you paid for it. And then you roll the other dollars out into the IRA. So that would probably be a better move for you. So take a look at net unrealized appreciation. If you do have highly appreciated company stock inside your 401k plan, it's a big tax deal. Let's go to the next one, Big Al.
All right, this is Marco, Rancho San Diego. Fortunately, it's a shorter question. I'm 50 years old and I'm getting a divorce. I need some additional money for legal expenses. Can I tap my IRA? Well, the truth is, Marco, you can always tap your IRA, but is it a good idea? No, because you're going to pay tax on it and you're going to pay a penalty on it. So there's a few ways that you can get money out of your IRA before 59 and a half. For example, if let's see, you
first-time home buyer,
yeah, first-time $10,000 for a first-time home buyer, higher education expenses if you're disabled and need health insurance, things like that, but not for legal expenses. So if you were to take money out of your IRA, you will pay income tax rates. If you're in a 25% tax bracket, 25% plus state, that's about 35%. Penalties are 12.5% between federal and state. Almost a 50% tax rate. So you don't really want to do that. And plus, your IRA is, what's it stand for? It's an individual retirement account. It's for your retirement. It's not for paying legal costs. So don't do it.
Ooh, your divorce hurts all over, doesn't it?
It does.
You got to pay the legal fees, and then you got to tap into your retirement accounts, and then you have to pay IRS fees, and then everything else. So,
yeah. So what's the moral? Don't do it? Don't get divorced?
That's why I'm single, my friend. No,
so you don't have to worry about it.
I'm waiting for the love of my life.
I'm happily married.
Just to come.
27 years.
Knocking on my door. Let's go to the next email question.
All right, Sandy in La Mesa. Let's see. I want to fund my IRA for my husband. Can I put the account in both of our names since I'm providing money for the account? That's an interesting question, Sandy. Well, it's an individual retirement account, which means it's individual, so it's one name or another. So you put an IRA, you can put dollars into your own IRA account. You can put IRA dollars into your husband's account. We just talked about you can use your income if your husband's not working for a spousal IRA. But no, you can't have a joint retirement account. They're individual accounts. Yeah,
that's another confusion there. Is that, okay, well here I'm funding the account. Is it a joint account? No, with any type of retirement account, it's separate property. If it's your 401k, if it's an IRA, 403b, any type of retirement account, just remember it's separate property. It's never joint, all right? So when you pass away, of course, then you know your spouse would inherit that, but it's never a joint account. That's it for us. Here's the poll question of today. All right, you can email us at info@purefinancialadvisors or purefinancial.com. Is James Taylor really a rock star? That's Big Al's idol, and it's scary. James Taylor, I'm telling you right now, you heard it here on Your Money, Your Wealth.
I'd say yes on that one.
Is not a rock star. Mick Jagger is a rock star. All right, thanks for joining us. Join us again next week, and we got a lot more fun-filled facts for you when it comes to your finances. For Big Al Clopine, I'm Joe Anderson. You just watched another episode of Your Money, Your Wealth. Have a great weekend, everyone.